All right, it is 1 o'clock. Let's kick back into it with Objective 5. Welcome back, everyone. When you're ready, Andrew. Thank you.
Cool. So Objective 5 is includes really high-level policy around that emphasises the importance of infrastructure enabling good services and vice versa. There were not a lot of submissions on this point, but there was an explicit request to ensure all bus stops, including basic ones, should have full weather protection, high quality tactile strips for vision impaired people along that nature. Our recommendation is to refer that to Waka Kotahi to inform national guidelines, which regional and local authorities seek to align with. In the guidance in the draft plan, it has a notion of basic bus stops through to premium bus stops, which aligns with guidelines coming from Waka Kotahi. One other point there was, and I believe it was in this section, an omission, so an error somehow, the action relating to coming up with a plan and strategy with partners for integration of PT and micromobility is meant to be an action under this section of the plan. Somehow it hasn't made it through. We've certainly drafted responses to submitters on the assumption that it is in the plan. Yeah, back to the chair.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions on this one? No, so is that the notion of having universal design embedded in infrastructure? Is it, Andrew? Is that where we're heading, or?
Yeah, look, I think so. The existing policy in the plan has this notion of end-to-end journey experience, and particularly for those with disability. So recognising all components of a journey need to work to make it viable. So that I think it's a language thing. You can call that universal design. I think it means the same thing.
Okay. So yep, no, that's fine. Eugene.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, is this, are we working on, probably similar to what you've just said, Chair, about standardisation of infrastructure? I.e., like, say, bus shelters, for example, do each TA go out and do a deal with a local engineer or something to design their bus shelters, or do we have more of a standardised system?
Yeah, look, really good question. So the draft plan sets out the minimum features of bus stops for different service levels. So, for example, you could imagine in a rural environment, raised curves, high quality shelters, real-time information, lighting, things like that might not be the most appropriate thing potentially, but highly appropriate on a highly patronaged urban type route. So there's some guidelines that outline a range of bus stop requirements, how they're procured, or what the method is really outside of the plan, if that makes sense. So yeah.
No. Okay. Okay. Andrew, are you just able to go over again the first and last mile infrastructure?
Yeah, so this is super important. So I think our future is really orientated around walking, micromobility, public transport use, and having as good an experience as possible connecting between these options is going to be good for public transport, but it's going to be good for micromobility as well. There are some practical challenges to doing that well, and being aligned across organisations around what our strategy is to maximising those benefits, in my view, is a really, really important thing. So, anchoring an action that requires us to work with our territorial partners in particular, but other stakeholders to land a joint strategy around how we integrate those modes is important. So, for example, is it as simple as bike racks on buses? I would suggest it's not that simple. It needs to be much broader, and there'll be actions out of that different parties need to implement in coordination to make it effective.
Okay. Is there anything further on objective 5 that we need to cover off? Anyone around the table? Nope. Okay. I think we can move on to the next objective, Andrew.
Cool. Objective 6, funding and affordability. So this is the section where we, signal if all of the aspirations within the plan were to be implemented, roughly, what would that cost? So that generated some feedback from submissions. Submissions were interesting, actually. They ranged from, hey, this is expensive, through to please get on with it and do it faster. In this section, we also acknowledge that, particularly for the metro area, better alignment between key stakeholders is going to be essential in order to be able to deliver on the program. So this is speaking to the Metro Spatial Plan Transport Business Case as well. There's been, and Mark can speak to this, parallel work streams underway around the PT Business Improvement Review. So feedback as part of that review and as part of this PT plan review process has been really useful. I think if I was to summarise it, I think there's strong support for the most part about moving to a regionally consistent rating model for service component of expenditure, PT service component of expenditure. Mark, giving you a heads up, I'm hoping you can speak to that shortly. There are some nuances to that as well. In the plan, there was submissions relating to organisational alignment, funding for infrastructure, that there's more to work through. So I'm not recommending putting a policy position in, but an action to work with our partners to identify what those next steps might be. I think the notion is there's support for having these conversations and moving towards a different operating model, but making sure that's done in partnership across stakeholders is what's come through really, really clearly, which is useful. And then a third component was under this section, we also acknowledge that urban form, so this is particularly for our larger towns and the city, where for new development areas, urban form and how that development occurs has a really significant implication on the viability of providing frequent services and better. So we proposed in the draft plan, we had some really high level criteria around what those urban form factors are that lend itself well to the viability of public transport. We had submissions requesting that we're more explicit about that, which we think is a good idea. So the amended, we're recommending amendments that make that more explicit in terms of what those linkages are, which are included as Appendix B to the plan. But yeah, that's probably a summary of the key topic areas for this section. Back to you, the Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Teague.
Thanks. I suppose you touched on, some people said it's going to cost too much and others said just get on with it. And for those who, suggesting that there's a big cost here, this has been touched on in clause 2.71 around future investment, where it talks about the cost of not delivering these services. And I think, to me, that I'd personally like to see some more emphasis on that, or some expanding of that message. You know, and this isn't just about emissions and climate change. So one of the key costs to the community and the country is from tailpipe emissions. And a recent just released health study has suggested that you could attribute 3,300 deaths a year to the emissions coming out of the tailpipe. That's not climate emissions, that's the nasty stuff that's coming out. And the vast majority of that can be attributed to cars and vehicles. And that's at a huge cost, I think somewhere around $15 billion a year to our economy. So, you know, in summary, I'd like to see the cost of not doing this sort of emphasised a bit more in that paragraph.
So, Dennis, just to sort of tease that out a little bit more, are you talking about the non-financial costs?
No, I'm talking about the financial costs, you know, of the health costs of you know, people dying and being hospitalised.
Okay.
You know, in particular in relation to tailpipe emissions. It's something that always gets overlooked in this commentary. We focus a lot on climate emissions. And I think even in Hamilton itself, the study said that you could attribute, I might have the figure a bit wrong, but somewhere in the region of 100 deaths a year in Hamilton alone. So it's really big. And that study will have all those figures.
Okay, can I get a staff response to that, please?
Yeah, look, I think that's achievable. So amending that section of the plan to reference examples of those costs that are borne, and you know, that would be retained in the absence of implementing the aspirations set in this plan, I think is a defendable thing to do. Like the MB report is really good. There's other sources we can reference to as well.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, just I guess just lend my support to that. We seem to just mainly talk about the benefits of emissions reduction, and there is a massive financial cost if we don't do all of these things. So, yeah, as you say, Andrew, that we'd be able to pull those figures from other places, but I think it's important to add something to that effect in the plan, in the body of the plan. Yeah.
Okay. Yep, happy to support that as well. Any further comments? No. Okay. Over to you, Andrew.
Oh, can I just make one little comment?
Sorry, Rodney.
I think the comment you hear most about when you're talking about money-wise is there's buses running around empty. You know, so if you can get people on them or deliver the service that people are going to fill the buses or use public transport, then people are quite happy to fund it. You never hear anyone saying, "Oh, there's a busload of kids, that's costs a fortune," you know, because people are happy with that. But you do hear people say, "Oh, there's an empty bus with 1 or 2 people." So it's kind of getting the right service to, and then people will quite happily put money in their pocket to, support it. My little comment.
Cool. Thanks, Rodney. All right. Is it enough feedback for you, Andrew, on that one?
Yes, I think that's quite clear. Yeah, happy that's captured, Mark.
Yes, so if I go back just also to the last one, just to make sure I captured them right, we've got the addition of an action to develop a joint strategy with partners for modal integration. It's capturing the thing about the first and last mile journey infrastructure and other matters, and then in relation to Objective 6, to expand the narrative over the costs of inaction, including the health costs of tailpipe emissions.
Perfect. Okay, so we're actually coming to the end. So the implementation and monitoring, section 3 of the plan. We received some submission points to amend the monitoring KPI sections of the plan to more clearly align with the aspirations of the plan. Staff recommendation is to we've made some amendments, particularly to the implementation table towards the back of the plan. So I think it sits on an A3 sheet landscape to more clearly reference the MSP, but also some of the other focus areas to align with recommendations covered elsewhere. And then the notion of the KPI section, I think we're very keen to do this, but capture it as an action. A lot of what's in the plan is aspirational, and then we need to tailor that a lot better to actual delivery plans. So keeping a really close eye on that as we go through LTP processes in particular. Yeah, back to yourself, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Councillor Tegg.
Sorry, I forgot about another issue for the previous section, the final objective around funding and so on. And there's one section there, I think it's P52 on actions. So in partnership with local authorities and other key stakeholders, regional council will investigate, and there's A, B and C, which are all fine. But I just wondered whether there's another one which has arisen out of a recent government announcement that councils may in the future be able to own and operate transport services. And I wonder whether we should add a third 1D to investigate that new ability to do that as a further option. So, it's not just a question of now operating, but that the council can actually own the asset under these proposed changes from central government.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that through the chair. The changes under the sustainable transport framework are so broad and significant that there are many, many amendments that we could make to this plan across its entire breadth to relate to that. Not only in terms of ownership of assets, the contracting arrangement and unit structures, potentially even matters like standards applied to vehicles. My suggestion, and it was raised, so I had it on the list to bring up at the end, was reference to PTOM and the sustainable transport model, how we work with that.
Right.
My suggestion would be to, rather than include it under any one specific thing, would be actually for us to include something right up front in the introduction that notes the government has announced changes to the public transport operating model, and that may necessitate revisions to this plan, because, like I said, there's from what the limited amount that we understand about those changes now mean that these plans could look very, very different in the future, because we do have all of those options.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Tegg. There's nothing, if there's nothing further, or yeah, what's next?
So before we get on to the next steps, there was one other matter that was raised, again on this list of things that I took at the very beginning, cycle back on them and make sure we cover them off. There was one that related to workforce, which was the bus driver condition, staff recruitment, retention condition, that side of things. And short of doing policy on the run, my suggestion would be that staff look at that in the context of the partnership policy under the partnerships under Objective 7. So Objective 7 talks about, recognises the importance of central government, transport operators and stakeholders working together to develop public transport services and infrastructure. Again, I'm not exactly certain, and Andrew would appreciate if you chipped in here, that if we included something in there about driver, the workforce attraction and retention, that may be, you know, a useful place for us to give effect to that that suggestion as well.
Yeah, look, I think that's a very good idea. We didn't cover off Objective 7 because we didn't receive any direct submissions in relation to it, but we did receive submissions in relation to drivers and workforce, and that would be a really natural home to acknowledge that. And picking up on your point earlier, the new PTOM, the framework that government announced to replace PTOM, a big focus of that is also towards improving working conditions for drivers, public transport workers as well. So between acknowledging that up front at the plan and having something specific under Objective 7, I think provides a really nice solution.
And through you, Chair, the last matter that came up here was in relation to the timing of implementation and review, alignment with Waka Kotahi funding cycles. And I felt that, again, on review, I think it may be useful for under Objective 6 for that to be noted, either probably in the commentary. I think what that may also do is address some concerns that the PT plan as it's written provides anything close to a blank check to lift those service levels up without going through appropriate funding cycles, both local and central government. I know there has been, and rightly should be, some nervousness, I think, about as Andrew mentioned, the increase in investment levels is significant, and it would certainly be subject to all of those necessary processes. I think that would probably also address that question about the timing of implementation and review. So a reference, and just to recap, a reference in under Objective 6 to reference the alignment with Waka Kotahi, but also local government funding cycles. And I think those were the only matters that came in the list at the very start that weren't otherwise addressed through the conversation objective by objective. Back to you, Andrew.
Yes, so from here, it's as we've gone through, we've firmed up the nature of the changes that the committee wishes to see. So we'll do our best. My sense is they are fairly easy amendments to include into the plan. So I think we can aim to have those as track change versions to RCC for the 5th of September. And then assuming it's adopted by RCC or endorsed by RCC, then it would go forward for adoption to Regional Council, Full Council on the 22nd of September. So from here, I just want to double check that the committee's satisfied we've captured the intent of the changes that the committee's of a mind to make. And then we would move to confirming that as a final sort of recommendation.
Oh, thanks, Andrew, for that. Just got a comment from Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, just a question on that. Do we need, on the staff recommendation, it says we're endorsing the amendments to this defined in the strike-through version and then endorsing the amended draft plan for adoption. Do we need to actually note that the additional changes endorsed by the committee will be included? Do we need to confirm? Yep. See, Dave is nodding. So can we add something in the staff rec, and I'm happy to move. 4 seconds, Madam Chair, if you wanted to move. Ready?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor O'Leary. Dave, are you able to bring the recommendation up? Okay, I'm happy to move and Councillor O'Leary is happy to second. that satisfy?
Right, and what we'll do is we'll list those amendments in the minutes rather than making a resolution that's.
That's more efficient.
Can I? So if you, I've got here my notes that I've read through. I can bring one last time if you prefer. But
We are happy with your note keeping.
Cool.
We trust you.
That's what I'm nervous of.
Tomorrow, we will publish the Regional Connections Committee agenda that will include the minutes from today, hopefully, with Mark's list as the noted corrections. So that should make it a little bit clearer. I don't know that we'll have the new strike through for that agenda, but we'll see how we go.
Okay. So are we doing all of those things today? It's fine. Yeah, yeah. Just this one, is it? Next week.
Not present might say, what's the difference between a recommended amendment and a noted amendment? Could you say noted amendments as proposed by the Deliberations Committee? Just to be clear, I mean, if you're not here, you wouldn't really know what it meant.
Should really.
I see what you mean, Dennis.
We know what it means.
That's fine.
This is the amended.
Read it out.
Transport plan, we've got too many drafts here. Some draft. Regional public transport plan with the noted amendments and minutes. That should be it. So you're endorsing the plan with this as marked up and your noted amendments that will be in the minutes. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's fine. We've got time. All right. If we're happy with that, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Oh,
I just want to,
sorry.
want to say.
Who would like to?
Yes, if you would.
The motion's on the table.
I just want to say this process to staff, actually, this process has been really easy to engage with. And Madam Chair, your chairing of the process as well. It's been quite a quick turnaround, but I think the plan is, I know the plan is aspirational and will achieve some really great things for our region. And yeah, just thank you, staff. I think the hearings the other day was one of the most enjoyable hearings actually of my 15 years. I was leaning into it. It was great. And it was awesome to see the amount of feedback from the public that was so positive and so interested in putting forward their ideas. It means that you got the consultation right, and it means that you got the plan right. So yeah, excellent process. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo those thoughts as well. And most of the, well, majority of the work is done behind the scenes. So yeah, thank you to our wonderful staff, and yeah, thank you to those around the table as well. So yeah, with that, move the motion. So if there's no further speakers, all those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Excellent. So we've got RCC next Monday. Yeah. So yeah, very good. You are. You are. Thank you, everybody. And we'll close the meeting. Thanks, Andrew.